Welcome to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric. It is with excitement and a bit of trepidation that I embark on today's video. I want to talk about cotton and spinning cotton. And I will preface this by saying that my experience spinning cotton is limited. My first attempt, while successful, was fraught with misadventure and a lot of learning curve. My second attempt was much more successful, and I do have a finished object with it. I have no idea where it is. When I moved, I'm not sure where it got packed. I had made a trivet, and I'll show a picture of it, out of the spun cotton. The one thing I remember most about that second spin of cotton was that the final yarn was so much softer than the crochet cottons that I've ever purchased. So I kept thinking that if it was something that I worked at, I'd probably really enjoy spinning cotton and certainly crocheting or knitting with my hand spun cotton. But before we get into the topic of cotton, I did have one finished object I wanted to share. I had just this strong urge a week or so ago, about the time I finished my last video and posted it, that I needed something a little bit more spring-like in my life right now. Our front room is fine, or not our front room, I'm sorry, our foyer, our entryway to our house. The construction we were doing, we were putting down some hardwood floors in that entryway. And that construction is finally finished, the painting is done, and I wanted to celebrate that project being finished by making another wall hanging. You must excuse me, I'm a little congested today. It is just allergies, but I'm in the process of switching from one allergy medicine to another, and so I'm just a tiny bit congested. But I wanted to share this with you. This is two of my favorite patterns. It's Sunbonnet Sue, and sometimes it's called Sam. It can be Overall Andy. There's a number of different names for him, but I love this pattern. It's one that I have I've digitized in the past, and then just this past 2 weeks ago, whatever, I decided to redigitize it because I wanted a little bit different edge trim to the applique pieces. So I was very happy with the colors I chose. I was happy with the changes that I made to the shape. There's a slight bit of change to her shape from when I did it the time before. It was for me it was quick because I've done this before. It was a quick project. I put it together and then I sat down and I did the quilting, and it was just the thing I needed because I had been feeling a little under the weather before the allergies. Oh, and it made me feel really wonderful because for those of you that might know something about hand quilting, for the first time in almost 20 years, I was able to quilt with the smaller needle that I used to quilt with back before my health took a turn. It has been a long road to get to the point where I can use the tinier needle. So in the hand sewing world, the larger the size, the number on the needle, the smaller the needle. And I have been using a size 9 these last years as I started quilting again, because I just simply could not hold on to the size 10, which is the smaller needle. And I am just so excited to share with you that when doing this quilt, I was actually able to use the small size 10 quilting between needle. And while my stitches aren't maybe as even as they were 20 some years ago, I'm just really thrilled. I'm not sure that I will always use the smaller needle. There are times that my hands don't exactly want to cooperate. The two quilts that I have in process right now, I will continue to use the larger needle so the stitches look even. but oh, it is such a joy. So I wanted to share that with you before I got into the topic of spinning cotton, because it's a success. And while it may, as I said, not be something I can do all the time, it is such a wonderful feeling of accomplishment to know that after nearly 15 years of concentration, thanks to spinning and then getting back into crochet and knitting, that thanks to concentration and effort, I've been able to get some of my functionality back in my hands. So I'm thrilled. Now, with that being said, I'm about to embark on showing you how to spin cotton, which is not an easy fiber for me. It is not one that I have practiced at a lot, but somebody did ask me about cotton, and so I did a little more research. I looked things up and pulled out my cotton stash, and so that's what I want to share with you next. So the first thing I want to share, for those of you who may not have ever seen, this is cotton. This is a cotton bowl, and the cotton comes off of it. You can take a chunk out, and it has little cotton balls, but in here there's seeds. And if you feel inside, you can feel seeds. They really kind of feel, let me see if I can pull one out. They make me think of an orange seed a little bit in the way they feel. So there we go. That's kind of its shape. It's got the leaf. This material here is a leaf material. There's a big seed. And that's what would have to be picked out of the cotton in order to then be able to spin it. You will see that cotton is a very short, this cotton is a very short staple fiber. So it's going to require probably a good amount of twist. But just like that, you can see I have a tiny bit of cotton spun. So that is cotton in its raw form. When you purchase cotton, you can purchase cotton in a number of prepared forms so that you don't have to sit there and pick it out. Unless, of course, you like doing that, in which case, I know there's a number of people who try growing cotton if they're in the right climate. That's not really something that I'm going to be doing. But you can purchase cotton. You can purchase cotton in this form. And what I would do with this, and I'll show you some of this in a moment, this has been picked. So this is picked cotton. And this is what you would take to some hand cards and card it. The hand cards need to be of fine mesh. This is actually, these little ones are my small hand, they are cotton cards. They're the ones I use most of the time for everything because I like to work with very fine fibers. So I bought these for two reasons. I bought the small, what they call the child size, because it's easier on my hands. And I bought the cotton carders because when I first started out, I was working with a lot of Angora, and it's a lot more delicate treatment to a fine fiber. So that's what I use. You can get them in other sizes, but you can get cotton carders and you can card. And I will actually show. What I did is after I carded, I guess I'll show that here now. After I carded, and this is some that is dyed, but after I carded it, I did it in a two-step kind of process. So this, as I said, is some that I put some dye on, and I carded it so it's open and fluffy. Then I put it back on the cards and I rolled it into a roll-log, or in this case, a puni. So I'm going to get back to this in just a moment. But first, before I talk about any more with carding and roll-logs, I will tell you flat out that my preference in experimenting with cotton has been to use cotton sliver. And really interesting is, as I was looking up different videos to see if I could supplement my past experience and experimentation with cotton, I discovered everybody kept saying that processed sliver has two ends. And one end you can draft off of really easily, and the other not so much. Now, and I now have fiber in my nose. I don't know which end this is. It's connected to a huge bag of the sliver, or what we also would call top, because it's certainly combed, not carded, and it's fiber that gets everywhere. So what I'm going to do, rather than try to just spin off the big thing, is I'm going to break it. And then taking this, I did a couple experiments with this, and that's what I want to share with you. So first of all, when I first started spinning cotton a number of years ago for, I think it was either Ravelinics or Tour de Fleece, it was a challenge I gave myself. I made a couple mistakes. One mistake was that I didn't do enough research. The second mistake is I dyed it before I spun it. And, well, this stuff, well, I'll show you a picture here. Or here. Or maybe both. But when you dye cotton, it compresses. It doesn't felt like wool does, but it definitely compresses, and you definitely have to open the fiber back up. This stuff compressed down into little tiny balls of difficultness. There was no way you could spin it without opening it up with hand cards, or yeah, I think hand cards are going to probably be the best bet in this. With the type of stuff I was dealing with, I think it really was something that it'd be hard to do with a regular drum carder. I am sure the processing plants have different ways, but it's the kind of thing that I'm like, yeah, it took a little bit of work. So the first thing, as I said, I learned is when you hand dye this, it gets compressed, and you really have to work to open it up, because once it becomes compressed and doesn't have all the air in it, it doesn't draft as easily, and it does make it a little more finicky. So the second thing that I learned with this, when experimenting this last time, is that it can help to go ahead and not have quite as much in your hand at one time. So when I was playing with this the other day, and let me move my camera just a little bit so you can see it drafting on. Oops, camera is not wanting to move. There we go. Let's try that again. Move the camera, and there. Okay. So when I was doing this the other day, and I was trying to draft on, and not having looked up the information yet about that there's one end versus another, I was doing a lot of, I know a lot of people do a short backwards draft when dealing with small, very short fibers. I actually have a tendency to pull forward as opposed to draft backwards. I tend to, I don't know, it just feels more comfortable to me to pull forward when I'm doing a short draft, a short forward or short, backward draft. So either way, I can draft back, I can draft forward. Now, clearly, based on my experience, what I'm already feeling, I have the correct end, because this is wanting to draft out really nicely. If I switch to the other end, what I discovered is it doesn't want to pull, it doesn't want to, and it wants to break apart. And so I was trying that, and I was doing a lot, when I had the wrong end, I was doing a lot of very short drafting. Short fibers, a lot of twist, and a lot of, either short forward or short backward draft. But as soon as I got the right end going, I found that the long draw was the better method. Now, I'm not going to go terribly thin, mainly because I'm just not that good with cotton yet. But once you have the correct end going, it wants to draft. And while I go a little bit slower, I definitely want to get a lot of twist in it. I want to check to see I'm getting enough twist. And there you have it. I'm going, one of the reasons I'm going slow is just because this is a different fiber. It's a different feel. It's not as slick as silk. And silk is definitely, while silk can be slippery, silk is nice because you oftentimes will have a little bit longer staple length. But this is a time where the long draw is really beneficial. And it's just allowing just enough twist to pass through my fingers to catch. Just enough. And one of the things I do is I like to hold my hand over the top as opposed to underneath. And I just let a tiny bit of twist go through, past, and control it. And if I get a thick area, I come in. So that is what I was finding works for me. This is definitely a fiber that I think you really have to just sit down and try. And don't get frustrated if it pulls through. And that's the other thing. Definitely making sure that you have enough twist going in it, and maybe adjusting your wheel so that it's not pulling too tightly. So I'm using a double drive, and it does want to pull. So making the adjustment so that it doesn't, I have a feeling it's the other end down, that it's not pulling too tightly. And this is probably pulling a little tighter than I need. So there's some tips about, I know that I've seen people where they wrap when they're doing lace weight. If you look up videos on spinning lace weight or read about comments about people talking about spinning lace weight, you can probably get some tips as to how to have a double drive not pull as tightly. One of them is by changing the circumference of your oops, let me show you in here. Changing the circumference of the inside of your bobbin. Okay. Some people will wrap some other stuff on it before they start to spin. It reduces it. Some people will have their hooks on, let's see, so you can see on both sides. I don't have that. And double wrap. Those kind of things can reduce it. If you're using Scotch tension, which this wheel could do, but I don't have it set up to do Scotch tension right now. If you're using Scotch tension, you can adjust the tension a little bit more. But as I was saying before, it drafted apart, and I think I have the wrong end. Yeah. Is when you're I just recommend you sit down, you experiment with doing a short draft, experiment with doing the long draft. If you haven't learned how to do a long draw, definitely do some practice with that. And my recommendation with practicing for the long draw is, and I will actually move over to this next. I recommend if you're wanting to practice the long draw, get yourself some roll logs. Ah, there we go. I'll pull the wheel a little closer to me, and now you can see it a little more. So when I want to practice a little bit more with doing the long draw, I will use roll logs, because I do find wool roll logs do tend to, for me, draft really well. But you have to, in doing roll logs and stuff, not get overly concerned about you'll get some little lumpy bumpies sometimes. It's sometimes just the nature of the fiber. So, do I suggest doing roll log Puni cotton as your first go? Well, honestly, this is actually a little bit less fiddly than the sliver for me. It does seem to want to grip a little bit. It's not as smooth. I have a piece I did earlier and that I pulled back on itself. Let me see if I can get it. There we go, up to the camera. You'll see it's not as smooth. So I was getting a lot smoother cotton finish single when I was using the sliver. Mainly because this is clean. It is it's just smooth, it's ready to go. There's no lumps and bumps. Whereas even when this is carded, it's got vegetable matter in it. It's got naps. If that's the proper word with cotton. It's just, that's the nature of it. And it's possible, I guess, you could find some other that might be smoother. But for my purpose and what I have, this is just going to be textured. So the difference is, this is going to be more likely to give me a smooth, finished cotton yarn. Whereas this is going to give me a little bit more of a textured cotton yarn. Both have their place, and both will be, I think, lovely in the end. I won't have a finished skein from this anytime soon, but I did want to share this with you. I do recommend, if you're interested in trying something that's a little bit of a challenge. Oops, sorry about bumping the camera. Give this a try. Amazingly, this, I mean, I really can understand how, it's funny, when I do wool, maybe not so much so, but with this wheel, I'm going slow, letting the twist build up, letting it pull away, and as you can see, I'm not even using my other hand. And that is not something I do very often when I spin. So, I think, my conclusion is that it's, oh, and I've dropped my scarf. My conclusion, this is just one of those days, but I am glad that I'm sitting here and I'm making this video. It's been kind of fun to think about something a little bit outside of my comfort zone and a little outside of the box for me. When I started this, and even when I was doing my practice and preparation the other day, I really thought that I would say at the end, oh my goodness, definitely go with the sliver. But honestly, now that I've taken the time to do a little dyeing and card it open, and I think I've finished carding all of it open, but as I said, I have a picture. It took a little bit of time to card open the dyed fiber. It would take, well, if I show that right now, taking something like this that I haven't completely messed up with dye and loading it on my carders and just making myself, just doing a little bit of carding. And I know that there are people who are horrified because they see that I'm switching hands, but you have to do what you have to do, and I just can't, I can't go the other direction. So I swap hands with my my carders. Pass it through 2 or 3 times. And then what I do, this is just my preference. I do this with wool. When I want to have a roll log, or when in the, you know, I think I don't make roll logs, I make puni, regardless, because I like to actually have it go a little bit tighter. Okay, whereas a roll log, if you look at somebody making a true roll log, it's a you don't use the dowel, and it's a looser just barely rolled. So if you see, I just did that really quickly, 2 passes, and I am ready to once again spin. And here's the thing, so this is where I was trying to go with this. As much as I think this gives a more slick and finished yarn, and if you're used to working with silky fibers, if you're used to working with very fine fibers, if you're used to, if you've practiced spinning, nylons, the acrylics, anything that's slippery, if you've spun silk, you'll probably have no problem picking up the cotton sliver and spinning, as long as you get the twist, as long as you get your tension right, and as long as you're spinning from the correct end of the big long sliver snake of fiber. But while that will give you a nicer finished, I think, yarn, the texture of this is not unappealing, and it grabs, it grabs and it holds, and it's taking the twist. And if you know how to do a long draw, then you're set. If you don't know how to use a long draw or do the long draw, well, who knows? Maybe this is exactly the thing that will help you learn. Or it will just spin off onto the bobbin and get away from you. So I hope that this has been able to give you a little bit of an overview. I didn't want to go horribly long with this. I didn't want to get too in depth, because I think with most spinning, I think with actually all spinning, the best thing to do is to, read some material, watch some videos, but really just at the end of the day, dive in and decide what you are comfortable with. I know that people get frustrated because of the learning process takes a while to develop the muscle. And like I started this video talking about with my quilt. And this is whether it is cotton or quilting, spinning, knitting, the muscle memory in our hands, the muscle strength in our hands, the dexterity is something we need to practice at. Sometimes we find there's something we just jump right into and it's really easy for us. It's a natural thing for us. But other times we realize that even if it's natural, it takes a lot of practice, because we're teaching our hands to do something. Just like when we were little and we learned to eat with a spoon and we held a pencil for the first time. These skills require us to teach our hands and our brain to work in a different way than we've been taught before. So give yourself permission to have lumpy and bumpy and have it pull off. Give yourself time to practice. And excuse me. What I've learned in trying to get my kids to spin, knit, any of these things, is that it helps if you start with things that help make it easier. And I found with my kids that when I gave them roll-logs, they just found it easier. Even if they were spinning and doing it up close and doing little draft after little draft after little draft, it still made it easier for them to feel like they were in control because it was in this form. So whether you're doing wool or cotton, if you feel like your efforts are still a little, you're struggling, give this a try. It's, yes, getting yourself, this is an investment, but then again, so is a wheel. And you can make tiny ones of these with, slicker brushes and dog stuff, but the investment really can help you when it makes it so that you have a product you can make, as you saw earlier, really quickly. Whether it's with wool or it's cotton, it's a product you can make really quickly and you can spin and you can spin to have it with success. So investing in the tools, investing in the time, and most importantly, remembering you're investing in a skill you're teaching yourself. So allow yourself to have that learning process. Allow yourself to have that time to develop. When I was quilting 26 years ago, actually 27 years ago, I was doing a lot of quilting. I was pregnant with my first child, and I was doing a lot of hand quilting, during my work breaks, when I was watching TV, and I could use the tiny needles, and I had tiny little stitches. But life and infirmity and lots of challenges made it to where I almost lost that ability entirely. With patience, perseverance, and a whole lot of support, I've been able to regain a lot of what I had once lost. And in addition, I've been able to learn new things that I didn't know how to do before. And it does take a lot of thinking and hands and feeling and patience with myself. And there are days that it works just fine. And there are days that it doesn't work as fine. And that's part of what it's teaching you. It's not just about the pretty thing to hang on your wall, or the piece of clothing that you are making, or in the case of my second cotton spin, a trivet for a teapot. It's not necessarily just about the finished product. It's about that journey of learning and teaching yourself how to do something, but teaching yourself how to be patient with yourself. And that is something that I think in any age, but especially right now, we need to value much higher than so many of the other things that we do. Learning how to become patient with ourselves, learning how to have that joy and satisfaction of the learning process, of the journey. That is the great skill we're learning as we also hopefully do a little unwinding with fiber and fabric. So that's the message and the information. Feel free to ask questions or make comments if you feel like it. There's some other really great videos out there where people are showing you the different types of fiber, different ways to spin cotton. When it comes to carding and using hand cards, oh, please look up some of the more experts on it. But remember that at the end of the day, we have to do what makes it work for us, even if we are breaking some of the standard rules or guidance. I understand why we shouldn't, swap hands. If you're carding like this and then you flip them around and card like this, you're using your muscles evenly, and it's better for your overall physical health. Unless, of course, doing that causes you physical issues. So sometimes we have to break the rules. Sometimes we just have to make it work and get it done, so that at the end of the day, we have learned something. We have produced something, and we've had enjoyment doing it. I wish you all the best. I hope you're staying healthy and safe. Most importantly, I hope you're taking time to unwind with fiber and fabric. Until I see you again, please find joy and find peace in this crazy world. We'll see you soon.